Botticelli worked in Rome for 2 years, painting frescoes in the newly built Sistine Chapel. Originally spelt 16, for it was named after Sixtus IV. But Botticelli's major work for the Pope consisted of several large biblical scenes. These appear less graceful, more awkward, and more sombre-hued. This may well reflect the lack of freedom and ease that he felt in these commissions, as well as his feelings on his absence from the lightness and brilliance of Lorenzo's circle. On his return to Florence, Botticelli would quickly rediscover the lightness of his previous inspiration. Once again, he would be commissioned by Lorenzo's cousin, Lorenzo di Pierfrancesco de' Medici, and in response he produced the second of his transcendent masterpieces, The Birth of Venus. This found its immediate inspiration in a verse from Poliziano. She travels through sea where white waves surface, a young virgin without a human face. Towards the shore by lustful zephyrs blown, beneath blue sky, on a shell she is born. Yet Botticelli's painting would become infused with much, much more than this simple classical scene. Where earlier Renaissance paintings had incorporated scientific discoveries, perspective, anatomy and so forth, The Birth of Venus embodies philosophy. The serene simplicity of Venus being washed ashore on her scallop shell is in fact interwoven with all manner of highly complex Platonic illusions. Ficino and Poliziano once devoted an entire evening meeting of the Platonic Academy to elucidating different Platonic aspects of Botticelli's Birth of Venus. The main figure is said to have been a portrait of Simonetta Vespucci. This time she appears both more beautiful and more ethereal, a haunting evocation of the young virgin without a human face. The legendary beauty that Giuliano and Lorenzo had loved in her life now becomes an otherworldly emblem of the Platonic love which created the world. This Venus has an idealized spiritual quality, part of the beautiful reality that is visible when we turn our gaze away from the shadows playing over the wall of the dark cave of merely worldly appearance. So that was a reading from a book that I've been reading recently called The Medici, Godfathers of the Renaissance by Paul Strathern, or Strathern, not quite sure how to pronounce it. That's the cover. It's a really good book, and admittedly I've been reading it for quite a while. I think I started it in January, along with about 5 other books, all more or less history books. I think I've been reading it a lot more recently. I've kind of, in a way, been sort of binge reading it for the last few days, because I recently finished the TV series The Medici, because season 3 came out on Netflix last Friday, and it's kind of weird. I watched the second series on Netflix first, because I didn't realise that the first series was actually on there, or it might have been added later, I don't quite remember, but I wasn't aware that it was there for some reason. And so I actually watched it, season 2 first, season 1, which is with Cosimo, Richard Madden, and then now watched season 3. So it's kind of a weird way to watch it, but it does make it interesting, I think. And along with starting to replay Assassin's Creed 2 again, which is one of my favourite games, yeah, I've just been going to this book a lot more, because as a history student, I find lots of history very interesting, particularly the Renaissance, and particularly the Renaissance in Italy. That kind of late medieval, early modern crossover, where you get the seeds of the modern world coming through, or being planted, I should say. I find it tremendously interesting. And also being someone who is very much interested in the arts. You know, it's the Renaissance is kind of the place where art sort of evolved from being essentially a craft, where it was comparable to being a blacksmith or a carpenter or a tailor. It then evolved, as I say, from that to being a distinct art form. That you kind of think of it today. It's, you know, you wouldn't compare, you know, an artist nowadays to a blacksmith. Yeah, I mean, mainly because blacksmiths don't really exist anymore, but they do exist. It's that kind of idea of, you know, let's say a carpenter makes you a piece of furniture. You wouldn't compare them and say they're equal to an artist. You know, I guess the best way of saying it is, like, you go to IKEA. It's not the same as going into an art gallery. You know, sure, there are things there on sale for people to buy, but see, now the value of art is so much greater because it's this elevated form of expression. You know, you go buy a sofa, but to buy a real quality piece of art is a lot more. Even though they both go in your house and they're both essentially for people to admire and enjoy. You know. But yeah, that's sort of one aspect of the book. I mean, the book's title obviously is Godfathers of the Renaissance. So he'll talk about, you know, the politics and the economics of the Medici family, and also obviously wider Italy and to an extent Europe at the time. He'll, you know, then spend or devote a large part of the book to the cultural side of it, the artistic side. So yeah, even if you don't know a lot about the Medici, I think when we think of the Medici, you can't divorce the Medici from the Renaissance, because, you know, as early as someone like Giovanni de' Medici, who's Lorenzo the Magnificent's great-grandfather, through to Lorenzo's grandfather Cosimo and his father Piero and himself, they were always, you know, investing in artists and commissioning works and allowing these sort of new Renaissance humanist artists and architects to, you know, design their palazzos or to design church doors or cathedrals. You know, famously, obviously, the dome of, I think it's called Santa Maria Novella, the famous dome in Florence, was commissioned a long time before the Medici were in power, but it was finished, the final commission of it was undertaken or ordered by Cosimo de' Medici. You know, Brunelleschi was the architect, and so the Medici sort of funded that, and it's that, you know, you can't now, you type in Florence into Google and that dome it's iconic. That is Florence to us. It's the idea of Florence, that piece of architecture. So yeah, it's a fascinating period of history, and you know, I would encourage anyone who's interested to read. I mean, this is the only book on the Medici I've read, but I would encourage anyone watching to read it. It's really quite fantastic, and as I say, it's not primarily about art or politics. It's a nice blend of both, and as a fan of the Medici series on Netflix, I think it's a really nice complement to that. And I think I recently saw a video of Bradley James, who plays Giuliano de' Medici in the series, and he's holding a copy of this book. And reading it, you get a sense that the creators of the show must have used this as at least one piece of their source material. You know, so there's lots of things in the book that you recognise that they've taken and they've put into the show, and they've compressed the chronology and moved things closer together, but the kernels of historical truth are definitely in the show, and obviously they're dramatised a bit. But it was a very polemical time for the people of Florence. So they're not wrong to dramatise it, because it was dramatic. There was a lot going on, you know. So yeah, I just thought I'd share that with you. So yeah, hope you're all well, and yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna make a video on next, but I'm sure it will just happen. And yeah, read more. It's good. Reading is good. Reading is very good. Definitely my favourite hobby, for sure.